Hey everybody, it's Emily. Welcome to another Grass River microclass. I'm hanging out on the Woodland Loop on a beautiful day today, but I do want to talk about something a little bit less beautiful for this microclass. We are going to be talking about a relatively new invader to Michigan's lakes and streams, the New Zealand mudsnail. And as you can guess, it's originally from New Zealand. It's an invasive, small little snail. So today we'll talk about how to identify it and where it's been found so far. Also, its impacts to ecosystems that it invades, and also what you can do to prevent the spread of this threat. All right, so let's start with talking about where these snails have been found so far. So they were first discovered in the United States back in 1987 in the Snake River in Idaho. Then they popped up in the Great Lakes in the early 90s, but it's been relatively a recent phenomenon that they have invaded our inland rivers and streams in Michigan. So the first instance of this, or the first reported instance of this, was back in 2015 in the Pere Marquette River, though we think that they were detected in the Boardman back in 2013, but just not reported. But so far, they've been detected in the Pere Marquette and Boardman rivers, and the Au Sable, the Upper Manistee, and then one isolated detection from the Pine River. And you guys, unfortunately, we found some pretty suspicious looking snails at our stream monitoring event a couple Saturdays ago at the mouth of Shanty Creek, where it empties out into Grass River. We sent those off to researchers downstate who are running a genetic test to just 100% confirm that they are New Zealand mudsnails, but we are all relatively sure just from physical characteristics that that's what they are. So we'll talk about how to prevent spread later. But let's see, I do want to say that the primary mode that these snails are all spread around the country and between water bodies is A, through shipping channels, but B, through outdoor recreation. Specifically anglers. New Zealand mudsnails love to get on fishermen's waders, and then if a fisherman uses those waders in a different water body, the snails can spread. And the same is true to a lesser extent with kayaks. But what's really interesting about New Zealand mudsnail biology is that they reproduce asexually. Pretty much the entire population are females. They're all clones. They reproduce asexually, meaning they don't need another snail to reproduce. So even if just one snail is introduced to a new water body, it can reproduce and the population can spread like crazy. So as you can probably guess from all of that information, they tolerate and can invade a wide variety of habitats, everything from lakes to really fast-moving rivers or smaller streams. They can even tolerate brackish water in addition to fresh water, and they can tolerate a wide variety of water temperatures. So keep your eyes peeled no matter where you are out there on the water this summer in northern Michigan for these critters. And now I'm going to teach you how to identify them. So they're very small, about 4 to 6 millimeters at full length, and that's about 1/8 of an inch, so really tiny. They have usually about 5 to 6 whorls or spirals on their shell, but it can be anywhere from 3 to 8, usually in that 5 to 6 range though. They can be tan to really dark brown, and when you point the shell up and the opening or operculum is facing you, it should be on the right side, right-hand side. And look for these guys, or ladies I should say, since most of them are female. Look for these ladies especially along like large downed woody debris in streams, which is where we found them at the mouth of Shanty Creek, but they can also live in the muck, on aquatic plants, in leaf packs. So look for them in a wide variety of habitats. So you might be wondering what negative impacts these critters have to the ecosystem, because remember, in order for something to be an invasive species, it has to not only be non-native, but also it has to have a negative impact on the ecosystem, the economy, or human health. So these snails do harm the ecosystems that they invade. And it's important to note that research is still ongoing on exactly what the threats are. So there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding this, but it does seem from current research that they do outcompete native macroinvertebrates. So those native, you know, larval mayflies, caddisflies, stoneflies, all the good little bugs that live in rivers and streams and that are prime food for our many of our native fish like brook trout. So they outcompete those. They alter algal communities because they can reach densities of up to hundreds of thousands per square meter. Imagine that, it'd just be a ton of tiny snails on top of each other. So you can imagine that they can sort of just mow down every sort of food in sight. And because they outcompete native macroinvertebrates and they can reach such high densities, they often make their way onto the menu for our native fish species. The problem is that they don't actually provide a lot of nutrition because they're so hardy that they can actually survive going through the digestive tract of a fish and come out unharmed. So the fish isn't getting any nutrition from them. Studies have shown that fish that exist in areas where New Zealand mudsnails have colonized and that utilize them as part of their diet do have lower body condition than fish that do not eat New Zealand mudsnails. So what makes this whole New Zealand mudsnail invasion really scary is that there are no effective control methods. So once they've established a population somewhere, there's no way to eradicate them, which makes preventing their spread from water body to water body even more important. So here's what you can do to prevent their spread. It's really easy. So whenever you are wading around in a stream in waders or boots or even kayaking, whenever you have any equipment in a stream, when you get out of the water, visually inspect your equipment, remove any aquatic plants, any muck. If you have waders, we suggest using a stiff bristled boot brush to really scrub the bottom of your boots, especially to get all the muck out of the tread where snails could be hiding. And then once you've done that, spray your equipment liberally with Formula 409. Yep, the household cleaner. It's been shown to be 100% effective at killing any New Zealand mudsnails that might be hiding on your equipment as long as you leave it on for at least 20 minutes. And then once you've left it on for 20 minutes, you can rinse your equipment with tap water away from the stream or river so that those chemicals don't enter the water body. And that's it. So we suggest keeping a bottle of 409 in your car or your field kit or your boat when you're fishing. And you're good to go. All right, thanks for tuning in to this little bit of a Debbie Downer micro class, but I wanted to share this important information with you guys, especially at the beginning of the summer season when most of us will be enjoying time in the water. If you want to know more, there's a great website run by the Great Lakes New Zealand Mudsnail Collaborative. The website is just nzmscollaborative.org. And they have lots of great resources, including how to report it if you think you may have found New Zealand mudsnails. All right, until next week, everybody. Bye.